The problem with American tennis. Going back just a few decades, American tennis was the gold standard. You had superstars such as Jim Courier, Jimmy Connors, John McEnroe, Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, and the last American Slam winner, Andy Roddick, who was the last American to be number one in the world or win a Grand Slam, which was in 2003 at the US Open. Now, let's talk about what's wrong with this current generation of American tennis players. For the last 18 years, countless young Americans have been touted as future number ones and Grand Slam winners. You have players such as Jack Sock, Ryan Harrison, Donald Young, John Isner, Sam Querrey, Steve Johnson, Jared Donaldson, and a few others among that list. The three best American players as of late would be Jack Sock and John Isner, who both reached an all-time high ranking of 8 in the world, followed by Sam Querrey, who peaked at number 11. Currently, there is no American player in the top 20, with the closest being John Isner at the ranking of 25. Now, getting to the problem of American tennis. For Americans, tennis is taught as big serve and bigger forehand, with little care put into backhand and setting up points. A big serve and big forehand are not unique to American tennis players. The problem is a big serve and big forehand being the only strength many American players have. By ignoring the backhand and going for forehand winners all the time, many American players have achieved top 100 ranking and the money that comes along with it. But is also why American players will not win Grand Slams anytime soon. One reason for this problem is the majority of tennis courts in the United States are hard courts, with some clubs having a hard true or green clay court, which is more of a novelty than anything else. You might be asking, what's the difference between red and green clay? A green clay court, or called hard true, actually plays more like a hard court than red clay. It's faster, harder, and often far more predictable and lenient with the bounces than red clay. Green clay is the red-headed stepchild of surfaces, with many European players ignoring it, and a lot of American players half committing to it. If you look at the best players right now, many of them grew up playing on red clay. They were able to use the slower courts to play tennis that requires more decision and shot making, as the ball is slower and bounces higher. With long rallies, red clay forces players to set up points and play smarter tennis. When you think of clay courts, you might think of the words consistency, shot making, repetition, patience, perseverance, grinding, suffering. These are all traits you might use to describe three of the best players right now, which are Nadal, Novak, and Roger Federer. Close to 68% of points played are 4 shots or less. So, why is developing a game that is designed for longer points important? Well, when we look at the average length of points at the French Open versus the US Open, we can see why. For example, at the French Open, 12% of rallies played at the French Open were 9 shots or more. Compare that to the US Open, which was 10%. That small percentage might not seem important, but it's those small percentages that make champions. A good example of how valuable a few points can be would be the Wimbledon 2007 final, which Federer won with only 7 more points won than Nadal. The lack of clay courts are handicapping American tennis players. This is also caused by many coaches who only focus on serve and forehand and ignore the fundamentals of the backhand along with shot selections. By being in the rallies longer, you can play more tennis, get better at controlling the ball, and executing on your shots when needed. Despite the fact that the majority of ATP Tour tournaments are played on hard courts, clay is still vital for developing your game. As hard courts are now becoming slower and slower, clay courts allow a player to improve their playing style and have better development. While there has been a push in recent years to increase the amount of clay courts in the United States, many locations stick with green clay or treat clay altogether as a novelty. When looking at the state of American tennis, it seems likely that there will not be another American Grand Slam winner for another decade.